welcome on behalf of fusefabric and Shopify. Thanks for coming today. I'm PJ. I'm going to be hosting the conversation. Today we're going to be talking about AI in retail, and we hope you walk away with some real-life insights in how people are using AI in retail, and also practical ways that you can use it in your organizations as well. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the panel to introduce themselves, starting with Giles.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This all feels very indulgent being at this end when I'm at this time of day. I feel a conversation feels much more natural. So thanks for having me. I guess my story briefly is, I was the head of technology at Selfridges, digital director at Burberry for 5 or 6 years. I've probably worked in sort of a dozen retail brands or retailers over my career in quite meaningful ways, mostly leading technology teams, departments, or innovations. I now consult and advise CIOs and CTOs with different technology, strategy, or people problems in their departments. And I guess that's given me some freedom when you step out of the in-house world to kind of actually look forward a bit more, because sometimes in those roles it's really hard not to just sort of simply be looking behind or trying to stay alive. And so it's nice to have some freedoms. And in this period of last year, I guess I've become an observer of lots of other cool ideas that have kind of come from a lot smarter people than me. So I guess this conversation hopefully is a bit more inclusive, that we can bring to life some of the things I think that are interesting that are going on. Yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you. Morning, everyone. Thanks for coming as well. So I'm Simon Hamblin, co-founder at fusefabric as well, along with PJ. For those that don't know me, my background's very much CTO, CIO for a lot of my career. So I was head of technology at ASOS.com, the fashion retailer, for 8 years. During the early 2000s, that hyper-growth phase of taking ASOS International into the billion-pound turnover region. I've successfully launched and exited the UK's largest Bitcoin exchange in the mid-2010s, and then went on to be global CTO for Emirates Group Travel, looking after 30 different travel brands around the world. So done the small stuff, done the large stuff, now co-founder at fusefabric, and I generally get involved in kind of new business opportunities and our technology side of the business as well. So excited to share about some of the thoughts that we've got around AI and what we're seeing amongst our clients today. So yeah, thanks for coming. And as this feels very formal, but actually it's just to create a lot of content to put online, if I'm honest as well. But we have done these before, and it's really useful when you guys also interact with us. Ask questions as we go. Don't make it all about us. If you've got questions, please feel free to ask them and get included in the conversation as well. So
excellent. Thank you. Okay, so let's kick off with the first question, and we'll put it to Giles. So what was your biggest aha moment in AI? When did you realize AI was essentially here, and then you could actually practically use it in your industry?
I think normally these sort of moments are, normally these sort of moments are, I think more interesting when it comes to something that means something to you personally. I mean, I remember being a kid and like seeing Jurassic Park for the first time. I was like, fucking hell, no one's going to be this. Like, this is the height of cinema, and it will not be beaten. And I felt that when Shazam came out as well as an app. That was a technology that I genuinely was like, whoa. Like, but I think with AI, and I suppose it was probably like most people, an interaction with ChatGPT. And I just started to play with it because people were talking about it a lot. And I typed in my A-level history question of like why Henry VIII was sort of exited Rome and got a divorce from Anne Boleyn, and remember the hard memories of writing a 3,000 word essay. It was probably pretty shit, but I put a lot of research and learning in it, and I watched ChatGPT just knock out my entire A-level project in about 8 seconds in a much more intelligent way. I think that was a point where I was like wow, like that has just undermined 3 months of my 17-year-old self, and the potential of that must be quite mind-blowing. And I suppose it's been a series of interactions since then, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about retail ones, but I think that was, and I think the other thing I noticed about ChatGPT that's different to a lot of technologies and the AI conversational platforms is like, I'm looking around me, it's not just my technology friends that are driving them forward. Like everyone in my social life seemed to have as strong a use or opinion as I did in terms of, using these stuff. And I think that's unusual as well. Normally you see like Web 2, was going from a sort of younger generation up, and finally, like, my parents got on Facebook like 14 years later, whereas ChatGPT and conversational search and AI just feels like it's exploded at every demographic.
Yeah, everyone's using it.
yeah,
Everyone's
yeah.
involved. So it's not just a tech thing or a retail thing.
Yeah.
It's across the board. Right.
My,
Simon.
my childhood memory is more Kit than Knight Rider. That was my first kind of my view into what AI was going to be in the future. So I was very much a Knight Rider fan and watched a lot of that. But similar to you, I think it's the GPT, conversational AI element. I think that's probably for a lot of people in the room as well, just because it was made so accessible, and as you said, kind of was so insightful and can automate your everyday tasks. But I think for me, then more recently, it's that agentic workflows. Just what you can do when you're actually harnessing multiple models put together and optimizing within the business as well. I'm just super excited about the possibilities of agentic workflows and the fact that you can build agentic workflows with very little kind of experience in terms of software development, and therefore making it really accessible to everyone. That to me is a super exciting sort of, I think, a space for the future. So
Excellent. Okay, so the next question. I mean, a lot of people we used to use chatbots and predictive search, and people thought that as a kind of the first iteration of AI. How do you see us now going beyond chatbots and predictive search? What is AI going to do across operations and engagement that chatbots couldn't do before?
I mean, as I was coming out of Selfridges and I've seen a lot of product discovery. There's a cool thing that we were piloting, a fashion-driven AI-powered product discovery using trends from TikTok to like populate the PDP. But I think even in the short time of the last 9 months, even it feels like our entire behavior is shifting. And we used to talk a lot about Burberry about on platform and off platform. So at least sort of 60-70% of Burberry.com's or Burberry sales online would be from a Burberry owned channel like .com, like an app, mobile app, whatever. And then suddenly we had a decent business with Farfetch, Harrods, and all these other businesses were selling Burberry online as a third party. And it was quite simple. Whereas now it just feels like there's an opportunity with these models to completely own the entire product discovery space. And actually, in a few years' time, how many people will even, I'm interested in where that traffic's going to go and how many people will actually be on Burberry.com. And if they're not on Burberry.com, how do Burberry control that experience, the discovery, their brand? It's going to throw up some interesting. And then I think the other thing that's never really felt completely native that just feels like it will happen is just voice as well. I started to play with, I've started to shop and do things in my car now on voice that didn't feel very natural a few years ago.
Yeah.
And probably didn't have the results as well to make it worthwhile.
The accuracy wasn't there.
Yeah. The funniest moment I've had with chat recently was watching my son talk to the voice chat GPT, and he's 5, and they were having a genuine sort of, I would call it counseling type conversations. And I was overhearing this. I just let it run, and he's literally talking to I kind of like, I feel like she's real, but and he was like, oh yeah, I fell over at school and hurt my knee, but it's okay. And he was going on and on and on. And I was thinking, when people say, oh, you can't do therapy online, I was like, well, I'm watching it happen, and I'm actually seeing my own son open up more to this artificial personality, and perhaps on this given moment he would with me. And so it starts to kind of question. I think where we get lost with this topic is we start to think it's all or not at all. So let's take virtual influencers. We love to get really aggressive and tribal about, like, there's the people who are like, all humans are dead, everything's going to be virtual. And then the other group are like, no, it's always going to be about the store and everything in real life interactions. When the reality is there's probably some nuance and there's probably some really, really great territory for both. And I suppose to bring that to life, you take images. I saw a great presentation the other week with a retailer I don't know much about, Magalu, which is a massive marketplace in Brazil, kind of like their version of an Amazon, or certainly competes very well with Amazon. And it was great because the audience was very experienced, very exec CEO people who I think ordinarily was sat there going, virtual influencing, not doing my brand, probably going to be rife with issues. And Magaloo invented a character, Mrs. Magaloo, who is their founder. She's on the third iteration. She's getting younger and noticeably more attractive compared to the first version, which is a different complication. But she's got 33 million followers. She's doing 17 million revenue with partnerships with like Coca-Cola and McDonald's. She's become a celebrity in Brazilian culture to the point that she's doing collaborations on adverts with real well-known people. And it was great to see that audience, seeing that become a real outcome-based channel, as opposed to it being sort of like a Gen Z cookie type, oh yeah, I'm sure there's a few kids doing that, but it's not the real thing. But I think we get lost in the conversation about like, I'm in that camp or that camp. And actually that's a great example where they've just used this character, created a character to bring a new capability and persona to a brand, but continue to do all the things they did really well traditionally. So I think that was a good marker for me, because I think about Thomas Burberry, who's obviously long dead, and he's got his own personality, and he was a creative person, and it has so much storytelling around that individual. I would love Burberry to be brave enough to think about how they could to have an asset like an individual like him who developed a brand that's now so famous is a massive opportunity. And you can still put guardrails around it. I'm sure that Mrs. Magaloo is not unleashed on the internet without some controls, right? So
everyone knows she's not real, right?
Yeah.
They're still engaging.
Yeah. I think that's a cool one to look up, because a friend of mine's actually started a startup, which is effectively the PR agency. If you're looking for a virtual influencer that's for your brand, she is now the talent agency for non-real people. And I know, again, when she told me about that, I was like, wow, I can't get my head around this. But the numbers are significant, and especially in fields like beauty and certain categories. So I think these things have got real credibility, but they're not going to undermine human interaction either.
Great, Simon.
Well, I think you summarized that really well. But I was just thinking back to your son talking to GPT, and I was saying last night that that's one of the top uses of GPTs is actually counseling and therapy. And that's why, a lot of people sort of confide in GPTs, because it's, you can have those offline conversations in private. And I'm of a believer as well that in the future that AI will also save marriages. They will provide that confidant to sort of have that therapy to then provide that perhaps missing link in marriages and complement a physical relationship with a virtual relationship. That will happen, I think quite quickly. And to a point where, I think I believe that I've heard from someone else, but I believe in this as well, that in our lifetimes, it will get to a point where there'll be a common thing of an AI marriage, right? Like that will be a thing. Essentially our grandkids at some point will get, there'll be a formal thing of AI marriages. And then that will then push into the physical side as well, because robotics and will be at that level with the AI built into it, that it might even complement or just be alternative to a physical relationship as well.
Well, I mean, I guess because we're in a retail conversation today, like a less sort of spiritual example for me. I was working with one of the famous department stores in London, beautiful place, and we were unpacking some different use cases, and we were talking about gifting, which is really important, especially in like luxury and premium brands. And like wine is a great example, right? Some people, and not me, are incredibly good at articulating what wine they like for exactly the right reason, that a sommelier could instantly understand it and help that journey. I'm not that person, right? I love wine and I like nice wine, but I would find it really difficult to explain what I like. And that's a great example, I think, like a conversational, or even like, why don't you upload a short video to a place on Harrods or Thornton Mason or whoever's website, be like, hi, I'm trying to buy a wine for my wife. She's really into fruity flavors, but deep wines. And then the AI can then do the clienteling over that selection. But there's some really nice, simple ideas that will also then attract engagement into your platform, known customers and other things. And I think, so and I know that some of the wine companies like Sensation and Virgin Wines have already quite doing a lot of this with pairings as well. Like, what foods should I pair? And then you could navigate what other departments there are in the Selfridges food hall or Thornton Mason. So, I think it feels more natural. Whether you're using typing or uploading a video or you want to do conversation, I think that's a fun use case where I could be like, yeah, I could solve a problem that I generally not very good at using, not particularly intelligent at doing today.
Moving on to procuring AI and choosing AI tools. There's a lot of tools out there. So what's your strategy? What kind of advice would you give to selecting AI tools in the marketplace now?
It's an interesting one, right? Because I'm going to just lay my stake in the ground with AI here. In that, first of all, we could talk all morning about AI, but I actually don't. It's actually really difficult to walk the halls at Shoptalk, and all you can hear is that word. But actually, it's a bit of a so what for me. It's just the enabler or the how. But the only interesting is like what the outcome is. And with AI, we're talking again. You've got a lot of people, especially on LinkedIn, like having these tribal discussions about their favorite model. And then we obviously had the models that released in Southeast Asia that were better than the ones in America. And I'm just finding the whole thing. This is all so already quite overwhelming that I just don't really have any interest in engaging in that debate. I think AI will eventually become like electricity. It will be like something that is just so fluid and unknown that we won't be arguing like, oh, I'm a British Gas guy. I get my electric from British Gas. You're like, no, I prefer Eon actually. We don't argue about utilities. I think AI will just become a utility. So honestly, I don't have hugely refined opinions about the merits of these different models. I sort of focus my personal energy into like the so what, which almost removes AI altogether. So what is the outcome of this amazing innovation that's over in Shoptalk? What is it actually going to do? Is it relevant for a luxury business or is it relevant for a grocery business? And if you actually step away from even the term AI and just think about it, you actually end up back in a place of like, what interesting things are now capabilities can we now do that we may not be able to do before? Now, obviously AI is has solved that problem, but I definitely feel more interested in the so what and the why as opposed to the how. I leave that to like the experts.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. It's changing so rapidly to kind of lock it down and give it a name straight away. It's probably
and even the outcomes. So one of the when you think about coming to an event like this morning, you think, okay, what have I seen recently that's cool that I might want to share? And even with AI, it's like every week, like the stakes get raised and something more interesting happens. And I got pushed to an article the other day from an agency that are working with Riyadh Airlines. Now, no one here has flown on Riyadh Airlines because it doesn't exist yet. It's about 3 or 4 months still from launching. The entire airline is AI envisioned, right? I mean, the short article explains how everything from the seat covers to the marketing material to the branding to the legal documents that enabling them to legally fly. And this airline is launching in a few months. And I hope I'm not overhyping it because I'm intrigued. If this is going to set new standards for how we actually experience flying, it's going to make it really interesting for like BA, who've got all these other airlines that have got all these institutional problems, pension debts, crazy bad technology architecture, all these other things that make them quite slow. Well, there could be an airline I think Riyadh Airline has the potential to do what Amazon did for fulfillment. And every other retailer was like, oh shit, now the bar has been raised. But for us to solve Amazon level fulfillment problems is going to cost us millions and millions of pounds. And we're probably going to mess it up along the way. And I think I like the Riyadh Airline example because although it's in transport, I'm like, why can't that happen? I can see an opportunity in retail for someone to build a department store from scratch in the same way without any of the inhibitors that we've probably all experienced in the room that are slowing us down from some quite fun and outcomes. I suppose there's a lot of table stake problems, I guess, that you're probably suffering in your role. You're kind of going, yeah, actually, my biggest problem right now is that like my PIN feed's broken and just had a P2 on the website. And now the idea of getting involved in a virtual influencer is hard to focus on.
Imagine, right?
Sometimes it's just about focus.
It's not the day job to worry about.
Yeah, I think it shows how far brands are willing to potentially go in the future and to automating a lot of the creation of the brand or the day-to-day of the brand. And we're working with a brand out in Saudi Arabia who, one of their views is actually how close can they get to 100% AI automated behind the scenes? So do you need a buying function, a typical merchandising function, an e-com function, a marketing function, and actually working with them to say, okay, well, what can we remove? What can we automate? And that's a really big, ambitious goal. Will they get there? Don't know. But it's a really good goal to have to say, can we get 100% AI automated from a retail perspective. That's just a super interesting place. Bringing it back to your comment though, I am interested in models. I'm the opposite to you. I love the model thing. And every week it changes. And that to me, it's just such an exciting space. And I always say to PJ, I'm like, I just don't know how everyone else keeps up with this, because I'm very much into the depths of AI and I struggle to keep up with it. And I consider myself somebody that can take on a lot of information and deal with a lot of things in parallel. But trying to keep up with everything that's going on is tough for me. And I love the whole model space and like trying to go, okay, well, this model's good for that. That model's good for that. That model's good for that. And I think what I've learned is that don't get bought into a model long term, because what's right today is not right tomorrow, because it'll just literally change overnight.
How do you keep up to date with all the models? So what's your strategy for the room? How do you keep up to date?
YouTube. Simply put. So YouTube, LinkedIn is probably my main intake of information. I'm always on YouTube, and there's a bunch of influencers on there that literally as soon as they come out, they're already reviewing it and telling you all about it. LinkedIn as well is a good place. I think this is a little bit slower than YouTube.
Yeah.
But generally those sorts of channels to keep up to date on things.
I think this is a really intrepid area. If you're a leader within a tech department in a big brand or retailer, like I'm humble enough to admit that, like, if it was ever a topic I'd be getting really good external advice on, it would be an AI strategy, and because there's just very few people, that have your depth of knowledge on how it's working, what to do. And now the problem with that is then you have to be very good at selecting the right partner as well, because you could get taken for a very good ride that way. But historically, Burberry's a good example. Burberry's actually a very high-performing, very, very mature digital team. It was a great experience. I think we did some really interesting innovations. I think it was a genuinely quite high competency. I've worked for other organizations that are lots less mature. Now, a lot of these companies have made a bit of a hash of their entire architecture, technology, and e-com in general. So I sort of a little bit curious that then the same head of architecture is like, right, AI is mine. I've got this. Leave it with me for a few years. I just think it's really dangerous, because they're obviously, it's just such a high risk area to go too deep on and pick the wrong model or the wrong approach, spend loads of money. But that said, there must be models and capabilities you could play with fairly risk free to deliver some outcomes and create some momentum that justifies maybe some of that investment in that good advice. When I think about a good example of an opportunity, would be at Burberry, there's a studio operation where a lot of obviously where we film all the products, or the runway show, but effectively all the products are shot. And again, the myth that AI will replace all the jobs is true in some scenarios and it's not in others. So Burberry can't scale content on a hyper way, because it's just not feasible cost-wise to run a studio operation to take an image of your white shirt with every demographic and skin tone and height and gender in the room, to take like hundreds of different shots with hundreds of different people of that one item isn't a feasible operation anyway. And they were never doing it before. AI could probably solve that problem really nicely, or even maybe put you or I as the model in the PLP. And that might be a nicer experience for me if I chose to go down that route. So with hyper-personalisation, would never really be, the website hasn't really changed in like 15 years as a general experience. They're all fairly similar in their capability. And I think there's an opportunity now to have like an experience that like literally morphs around your arrival, and whether you want to go on a very editorial experience versus a very commerce experience. But going back to, in this example, like again, you see people debating like, you can't replace real models with, and it causes all this heat on the internet. But I'm like, well, we're not. We're still leaving all of the famous and emerging real people that are modeling the clothes, because they are really the personalities that the customer wants to engage in. But actually, there is a customer that wants to see themselves or a version of themselves, and if AI can solve that problem, it's all very well having an amazing CMS and having all of your content available to push into all these channels. But if you can't generate enough content to then generate personalized outcomes, you've also missed. And like we used to say, like, because we built this really beautiful tech stack at Burberry, but one of my engineers said to me years after I left, it's like we built a Ferrari, but we still drive it like a Skoda. And actually Burberry has none of the technology barriers to doing some really cool shit. But they haven't actually now solved the business problem of doing the cool shit. And it's the first time in my career, the tech guys weren't the problem. I mean, normally we're the guys who are like, oh, we can't do anything because of the technology. We're like, well, there you go. Have that car. But I think AI's now arrived and maybe can start to be the fuel behind some of these ambitions of like, yeah, why can't every experience I have online be like so intimate to me? At the moment, at best, it's like, oh, you once looked up for a 5-year-old trainers, you must have a kid. You know, that's about as far as we've come so far.
I think we put it to our team, didn't we? In terms of the shopping experience, on one of our trips, we put it to the whole team about, do you want to see yourself? So in your real personalization, if you're shopping a site, would you like to see yourself in the clothing, or would you actually rather see a model that's similar to you in shape and size, and I think the room was split, wasn't it? And it wasn't. We was kind of just assuming that everyone was like, "Yeah, I want to see myself," shopping. But actually, the room was divided, wasn't it, at the time?
Do you have any other examples of ways you see AI working now? So we talked about image generation, but any other examples?
I saw a really cool technology that I've stayed quite close to. And it's rare that anyone in product management will say, like, you really should be developing problems before solutions. But this is a great example of a solution that I still think needs to find its problem. And I'm sure everyone in the room, I'd be interested in like their own idea of what they might use it for. I met a company called Wavy who have a device that's just slightly larger than an AirPod case. And it basically does facial recognition, but using radio waves. And then uses AI to then process all that information and comes up with a moment of inference. So to bring that to life, they're using them on point of sale. And if you go into your local shop and they don't have your favorite, flavor drink or yogurt, and you're naturally feeling pissed off and you decide, oh God, you're going to go, they're using that sensor to drive that, they're looking at your body gesture, stress levels, temperature, heart rate. Now, there's two interesting things about this technology that I find really unique. One, it's playing again. It's actually solving some of the privacy concerns. Like, most people are still probably not quite ready, even though there's cameras everywhere, like to have every interaction filmed, right? So this is creating a bit more of a social improvement on that dynamic. It's like, okay, it's just radio waves, but they're then creating intention points where maybe they could send the clienteling person to come and assist you in that moment. They're playing with dynamic pricing. Maybe we could lower the price based on that moment. And starting to actually do some of the things we can do online behaviorally using these different tracking tools and session analysis actually in a physical environment. And I'm not in the automobile industry, but one of my friends is doing an interesting AI powered music curation with Mercedes. So when you drive the car, depending on the weather, your driving style, it changes the music or curates new music, for example. And I was like, what if you put those two things together? What if Wavy could also tell me that I'm stressed or need to slow down? So I really found that technology kind of like, wow, like
that's like personalization, the next level. But
yeah,
just
like,
in what you're clicking on, but it's also bringing your emotional state into it.
Yeah, just even simple things like, why don't Wavy put that device in the queue at Fordham and Mason at Christmas when it's mayhem? And you could start to understand your footfall or the energy of, and it's one of the things they told me they're using it for, which is okay, is, those smiley faces at the airport, you're like happy, sad. Well, now you'll all walk past and they'll know the answer. And so that's, again, it's a lot less invasive and actually doesn't rely on us to do the kind of, so I think that's interesting because you're starting to get sentiment analysis through a physical device.
So obviously vibe coding is here. So people are talking and writing code, and someone was saying, well, why can't we just vibe code our own Shopify platform? Yeah, so it's that kind of extreme, same concept, 3D printing, you can create your own thing, and how far can you take it? That's the extreme side. You can,
and there's a really interesting department impact. What I sometimes think about is that my role, and obviously our roles as like leaders of big departments, has evolved a lot over like 10, 15 years, and departments change shape and different teams emerge in different disciplines. But at the moment I'm going like, what does a head of tech look like, or a head of product in 5-10 years? Like, part of the machine is that you've got all of this product management discipline, you've got teams, you've got squads, you've got agile, you've got all these other processes and practices that are there to make the best chance you're doing the right things and not making a shit show of them, right? That was based on a world where a marketeer still had quite a lot of barriers to doing technology development, or technologists could probably build their own brand now. And if they've got gaps like I have in marketing brilliance, well, I could probably use a lot of technology to fill my gap as a CMO. So I'm kind of like wondering how much we're all just going to morph as individuals into like kind of like ultra CEOs. Because whatever gap in your discipline you've got, if you wanted to start your own company or a brand, there's technology that could fill a decent part of that capability, right?
Yeah, it's a good segue. So Simon, so practically today, how do you prepare your stack for AI? You know, if your e-commerce stack, what can you do practically today, knowing the changes coming? How can you, give yourself the best chance to integrate these new technologies and expose your systems, essentially?
To prepare them for it, I think it's just more about the interoperability of them. So just making sure that they can integrate with different, AI models and different workflows and platforms. I think the point is, though, that, we talked about it earlier, that whatever you do today will probably not exist, in the future, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months time. So anything that you do put in has to be able to be, replaced quite easily in the future. And I think it's also a case of I also think that the conversation with the CFO is going to change as well. So today you might go to your CFO and say, okay, well, I'm going to invest X amount and I'm going to sweat this asset over 3 years and it's going to be done. And when it's in it, we're going to get all the benefits of it. And now the conversation with the CFO is, well, actually, I want to spend this much now. I'm going to put the solution in. Then I want to spend the same or a similar amount in a year's time to replace it. And then, in the next year, I'm going to replace it again because it's going to evolve over time. So I think that investment profile is also, the business case has changed as well.
So what do you say to the CFO who says, we'll wait 3 years till it settles down and then we'll have a look at AI?
Yeah, to politely sort of bring them on the journey around the fact that it's not, it's no longer that 3-year journey, is it? It's not going to be there for that time.
Can we afford not to look at AI right now?
No, because I think you've got like the examples like Wavy, which are cool. And I think the organizations have got a bit of time, space and money because they've already got their basics and foundations in place, could probably go play with Wavy in the same way. That's what I liked about Burberry is we've got the foundations there. So we could play with Roblox. We could play with a social store in China because we had enough airtime because we weren't solving really basic headache problems. Whereas I've worked in other brands of retailers where you're just fighting production issues and chaos and it's all over the place. So there's just no way you could elegantly attack that. But for those organizations, they could use AI to leapfrog back into the present. I think that's the opportunity, is that there's companies that like sort of really complicated problems like having a single view of a customer or having the right product attribution that used to cost a lot of money to fix and time. It feels like now organizations that have got away with or made mistakes in that area and actually quite far back on the maturity curve, there might be an opportunity to just use AI to play massive catch up on the boring stuff.
Yeah, so I'm quite in that camp. So I think there's like 3 main areas for retailers to use AI. That you've got data, content generation, so data analysis, content generation, and then essentially operations, lowering your TCO and reducing complexity, time to market, mistakes, etc. And then on the side of that, you've also got it from a software development perspective, so retailers can use it to accelerate whatever custom build they're doing in-house as well. But I'm super interested in the operational side of it, and I know we kind of touched on it as well. But to your point, is still just doing the basics that would bring retailers forward. So using it, for example, from a title and an image, we can generate all the images for that product. We can create the descriptions for that product. We can do the product attributions for the product. And I really like, and this is not a Shopify plug, but I do like it, because Shopify have a global taxonomy for all products, right? So not only the taxonomy, but the values for that taxonomy. And so from an image and title, we can infer the attributes and the values for those attributes. Then, think about it. You've got teams in the background. Retailer got 20, 30 people in a product. You're just putting all this manual information in. It can now all be inferred. Even to simple things like ordering of images. We did this piece of work as well for another retailer. We mapped out their as-is process. We sort of said, okay, right at the beginning, somebody in the photo studio renames each image as it comes off the camera, _1, _2, _3, because that's how it's going to go on the PDP. And then that goes through several other systems, different teams. And if somebody changes the file name, oh my God, then the whole process just breaks. And it's just like, because then we don't know what order it's got to go in the website, and the website has to have it in this particular way. Like, crikey, okay, well, how about we just ditch all of that, upload it in Shopify, and we know we can read the image and see if it's a front, back, side, or, lifestyle shot. And according to your rules, we'll just order it as soon as it goes in. And then suddenly they're, oh yeah, okay, we don't have to do all of that. All of that manual effort goes away. So what seems to be quite small things, like, yeah, of course we can generate a title, a description, or of course we can do that. Actually, when you add those together, I think that has a significant impact on retailers and their ability, to your point, to come forward, and reduce all of that complexity and waste and lower that cost of ownership. But I don't know. I get sometimes as well. I sort of hear about it in the space. Well, that's easy now. AI can do it, but who's actually doing it? To your point, I don't know if there's that many using it in production. But when that starts to get productionized and we add those bits together, I think we have a really big impact. But I think that almost like the media's gone ahead of that and we're not yet catch up with that. If that makes sense.
But the lowest hanging fruit for me would be like, we used to pay six-figure summary to a translation company just to do translations, right? And that's another operational cost that is taking away, ideally, reinvestment into other cooler things that are new and current, or like the CFO can have his money back, whichever way it falls. But there is a lot of opportunity just to consolidate and clean up a lot of the technology that actually now it was more functional than anything else, as opposed to like it's driving the experience of your brand. Given Shopify here, I think one of the reasons why Shopify is doing incredibly well at the moment is because it is coming. It's here at a time where everyone's trying to simplify some of the mess and consolidate some of the capabilities and technologies into one place. And CFOs prefer it because it's more predictable, because you haven't got this massive custom technology stack that's kind of got really kind of gnarly and gone all over the shop, and now is really expensive to maintain and predict. And even the concept of product teams and agile still is really difficult for CFOs to understand, that there's this never-ending project. That now, I totally believe in that discipline, but I still see a lot of CFOs who just don't get it, and they would rather now give away a share of revenue to different technologies because it's actually a much more predictable model than perhaps 10 years ago, where it would have been the opposite. But
do you have any, leading on from that, do you have any practical advice of how not just engineers, but people across the organization adopt AI and start using AI in their day-to-day roles? Any idea?
I think the only way to do any real change in an organization is to be practical and actually do stuff and make it happen. Now, obviously, some companies are going to need to figure out the guardrails of that. But like, whenever I see big transformation, whether it be like, going from waterfall to agile and adopting product management, like whenever there's thousands of hours of training in theory, I see so little progress. There's like a group of people that already sort of get it and just crack on, and there's a group of people that struggle to get it until they see it being done, and then they can follow. And I think that AI, when I remember a session at Selfridges where, and this is not long ago, right, where we were literally all on a call, and the legal department were like, what is this thing? And so there was no sense of how we should deal with it. It was like there was genuine and innocent ignorance from all of us of like, well, what do we do with it? Should we be using it? And like, I don't think the legal departments have had a chance to even get near this stuff, but it will catch up. I caught a really good debate between, and I actually hosted a conversation between an IP lawyer and a lady from TikTok Shop, which was quite a nice combination. And she was saying how at the moment, a lot of the liability is with the model. So obviously ChatGPT have got tens of thousands of lawsuits that they're just sort of palming off, but it's the platform that is the kind of liable for anything. But soon they might shift that to the content generator, and that's going to change everything. I'll give you an example. Like, no one's bothered to copy my image rights because I'm not very handsome or very interesting, right? But footballers, models, celebrities for years have had image rights associated with them, right? So a good example is the footballer Cole Palmer, England footballer. He has a celebration where he does his little shiver when he scores a goal, which he's now patented, and it's his celebration. I don't know how that works. If I did that on a Sunday morning, whether I could get sued by his people. But the point of this is like, image rights and protecting your content and IP was always something we just left to those unique individuals like Cristiano Ronaldo or whatever. Whereas now, actually, like, if my content ideas, however shit they are or whatever else, are generating someone else's commercial outcome. Like, if we could start to track that, like, I would love to be able to search where I've been used in every model that's ever been made so far, and start asking for like a penny per click back or something, right? It gets into interesting territory. Like, well, hold on, we're all now assets in a way that we've never been able to get anything back or control. But I just wonder whether there's some interesting dynamics. Going back to your question, in these organizations, part of the problem with adoption is that, like, the conversations are so primitive, right? It's like, should we turn the whole thing off?
Okay, so I think last question: the future of AI in retail. Where do you see looking ahead 3 years from now? Any predictions you would like to make?
For me, it's the agentic commerce side. I think we were discussing it last night. I'm a complete believer in that. Websites, we're going to become basically a structured data feed of products, information, and content. And so as a retailer, it's going to be interesting how we sort of work with that. People less interested in the experience. I still think some people are interested in a shopping experience and an immersive experience, but for a lot of people as well, it'll just be a side of desk thing. An agent shopping for you on your behalf, understanding your your needs, your style, and what you're after. And I gave Rich an example last night as well, where I think there'll be an agent will have access. Obviously, already has access to your diary. That's already possible. But we'll know, for example, that you're going on holiday in a couple of weeks, and say, do you want to buy a new outfit? Okay, yeah, shorts and t-shirt, great. Okay, I'll go and shop that for you, and it'll arrive. So that kind of agentic commerce, single place platform for sourcing what you're looking for and actually buying through that platform, through to a point where it's then automated for you to an extent based on what it knows about you and understands about your preferences. So I think that's in that short time scale, I think that's quite realistic.
Great. I'm just conscious of time. I just want to say a big thank you to Giles and Simon. But again, thank you again for attending. And
Thanks
thank you,
much.
Giles.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.